Right, okay, let's give this a go then. So, welcome to the first Driven247 podcast. Bit of a backstory, really. So, my name is Amber. I am a female petrol head. Been into cars since as long as I can remember, as the old chestnut saying goes. Been into cars since I was probably like 2 years old. So I'm not one of these people that's, got into cars because cars are cool, so I want to be cool, so let's get into cars. Or I've got friends that are into cars, so I have to get into cars. Like, nothing like that whatsoever. I can truly say that cars are in my blood, and that is mainly down to my dad. So my mum and dad still together, very fortunate for that. Been married nearly 30 years, I think. That is absolutely mad. They're kind of like, I say childhood sweethearts, but they've been together since they were like, I don't know, late teens. And then they had me in their early 20s, so I'm in my late 20s now, and I definitely can't imagine having a kid a few years back. That's absolutely madness, and I don't currently have any kids apart from a puppy. I can definitely see how these podcasts are going to be quite hard to stay on track with a subject. I can see how hard this is going to be, and I don't want to think about it too much because sometimes I can think about what I'm saying and I get lost in what I'm saying. So, yeah, been into cars ever since I was 2, mainly because of my dad. My dad, when he was growing up and started driving, he was into his Fords, so mainly like Ford Escorts, really, Mark 1s, Mark 2s, I believe. When he met my mum, like started dating and meeting up with my mum, she had Fiat Stradas, Fiat Pandas, and now my dad still owns an Escort to this day. Okay, it's off the road, but he's still got one. He's still got a couple of Fords, and he's kind of in later years as such, got back into the Fiat, so he's got an old style Fiat Panda, a kind of newer style Fiat Panda. They've got a Panda 100 horsepower, and my dad's got, I've had a couple of Stradas, but they've all been like project form, and he's just got the one Strada at the moment that he's just trying to build into a track car. So as I've grown up and, you get to that age where you realise you're actually a human being and stuff, my parents, I remember sitting in the back of certain cars like Fiat Pandas and the Escort Cabriolet, which my dad does have one, but it's a different one to the one I used to sit in the back of. kind of. And so, yeah, I just remember sitting in the back of all these cars. I used to help my dad, I guess, wash the cars, and I didn't really take much interest. The main thing I was into growing up, car-wise, was playing with cars, toy cars, mainly Matchbox, to be honest, because I thought Hot Wheels were just over the top. But now I have started collecting Hot Wheels cars because I've seen some other grown adults collecting them cars, and I thought, well, I'm going to get back into that. So yeah, just to say and stress really that I am, I can't stress enough, shall I say, that I am a true petrol head, and being a female into cars isn't as popular as being a guy into cars, if I'm being honest. And, nowadays I see more and more women, ladies, whatever, females, they're into their cars, which is cool. And, the generation is totally different nowadays with, it's just a whole nother topic, what's altogether, but like, women plumbers are a thing, women builders are a thing, and cool, that's cool. But yeah, I've been into cars for a very long time, and when I came to the age of 17, I took my first driving lesson, I think a couple of days after my birthday. I never did the whole moped thing, wasn't interested in bikes, to be honest. Although I wanted to drive, I was never eager to get on the road at 16 years old in a moped or anything, so I just waited the extra year and got driving. But I actually had my first car when I was probably well into the age of 16. I had one of my nan's old cars. She's no longer with us, but I had one of my nan's old cars. And to be honest, I kind of want this podcast, episode 1, as such, to be like an introduction. I want to talk about lots of things in these podcasts, hence why I want to do them, really, because podcasts are just for talking. I do the YouTube side of things, and YouTube is mainly for viewing. However, I do hope to put these on YouTube with a blank screen, unfortunately, but they'll go onto YouTube and contribute to the YouTube channel as well. Now, I don't know what the rules are with podcasting. I guess there are no rules, but I'm just going to pause kind of. If I just waffle for 20 minutes straight, I'm going to have no voice left. And I guess that's to be expected when you're just talking straight for 20 minutes. But I am going to have kind of little breathers and kind of do like these little slots of recording naturally, and I'll just pause when I just want to take a breath. I don't want to be leaving kind of empty blank spaces of me thinking, what should I say next? I think I'll just pause and then go to record when I've going to go on to another subject as such. But we'll try and keep it rolling as naturally as we can. Now, it's kind of sounds silly, but I knew podcasts were a thing, but never really took any interest until I was a parts delivery driver, which you can, as you can imagine, you're sat in a van on your own for many hours of the day, and you know, you're not always, you go back to the kind of yard, pick up parts, interact with the other colleagues and stuff. But I quite like that job, in and out of the van all the time, always on the road, going to different garages, kind of seeing what cars, because obviously being a petrol head, I showed interest in, what you're working on today, then Gary or whatever, I don't know. But I found that at that part of that time at that job, I was suffering really, really badly with anxiety, and I think that was mainly down to the fact that as a family we knew my nan was dying, so she'd had cancer on and off. We're not going to talk about too many depressing subjects, but yeah, I found that being on my own in the van really wasn't great for that time of life that I was going through, that bad time of life I was going through. And a YouTuber that I've watched for many, many years, so because I'm a YouTuber, I don't really watch other YouTubers, but the ones I do, I'm like loyal to. So there's about two that come to mind at the moment that I'm subscribed to, and I watch their videos pretty much religiously. And then there are a couple of smaller channels like my friends run that I watch. But yeah, this one guy, I've watched him for like, I don't know, I've watched both the channels I just kind of mentioned for like probably the past 5 years or so. So yeah, one of the YouTubers I knew had podcasts on Spotify, and I thought, why don't I give... I've never really thought the idea of listening to like one of these storybooks or a podcast, I thought they'd always be boring. But what I found with when I was doing that job and listening to this guy's podcast were, although I was in the van driving it, going to these garages, delivering car parts, I found that in between, while I was doing the driving, in between the garages, while I was driving, I was getting sucked into someone else as well, which was a bit more happier than mine at the time being, and I loved that. So I'd get in the van, drive 10 minutes down the road to the next garage, but for those 10 minutes I was driving, I was in a different headspace, I was in a different planet, I was in someone else's world, which, like I said, was better than mine at the time. And next minute, I've arrived at the garage, back out, back into realisation to deliver this car park, back in the van quickly because I wanted to hear the next bit of the podcast. And I just found that podcasts were just, this guy's podcasts at the time were just what I needed. And the thing about these podcasts is, unlike YouTube, I do a couple of talking videos on YouTube where I'm sat on the sofa talking to the camera. I've just filmed one today as I'm filming this podcast, actually. But I find that, like, talking videos don't really do well on YouTube unless you're doing something as well. Like, if you're fixing a car but you're doing action and talking, it's alright. But if you just sat talking, it's a bit boring. But I feel like, obviously, podcasts are just for talking and you guys are listening. So there's definitely an excuse for me to just waffle away, because that's the whole point of this podcast. And that's why I'm kind of doing it, because I feel like I can say more on a podcast than I would on YouTube. So I don't want to bore people on YouTube with just 20-minute talking videos. But a podcast is just about talking for as long as you can or as long as you want to. So yeah, that's kind of why I took a liking to podcasts. I liked listening to a certain person's podcast, and why I kind of thought I'd give them a go. And I'm trying to get myself out there more with, obviously I do YouTube and I'm on Instagram and the socials, blah, blah, blah. But I just thought a podcast is another venture to try. Whether I would become a face on a podcast, but the YouTube isn't as popular, or vice versa, but whatever. I just feel like doing a podcast. I'll see if I get any, views, see if I get any listeners, and just see if people are interested in me, in listening to me like this, kind of open up a bit more about stuff and waffling on about personal life and the car life that you see me kind of live on the YouTube side of things as well. So at the start of this podcast, I obviously kind of introduced myself, why I'm into cars, how long I've been into cars, and I suppose another kind of thing I want to talk about in this kind of first episode is, like, I suppose like kind of like a bit of what I've touched on already, as I just said, is like my upbringing and kind of things that happen to you when you're a kid, as in you go to school, and unfortunately I didn't fit in at school. I got bullied, not physically, luckily. I mean, not being funny, girls don't really fight at school. It's usually like a boy thing to fight. So, I was kind of probably like the wrong sex and stuff to ever get into fights and that. But like, I was bullied mainly at secondary school. I had primary school. I did really well. I actually don't live very far from my primary school at all nowadays. Primary school was great. I was, as you can imagine, where this is going. I was a big tomboy. I was into football. I was into playing with the lads, ball games and stuff, and going home from school and playing with my toy cars and that. To be honest, I kind of had one best kind of girlfriend, and she was a bit of a tomboy. I'd say I was definitely more of a tomboy than her, but yeah, all that interests me was kind of like the guys, playing with them, and this wasn't in a kind of like, I want to be with the guys because I fancy them. I didn't know what fancied meant. I didn't fancy any of the guys that I was hanging around with. They were just pure boy friends like that. I just preferred hanging around with boys than I did girls. Like, I didn't want to play hopscotch with the girls or Barbie dolls. I just wanted to get, kind of rough and play with the guys and that. I say rough, but I just felt like one of the lads growing up. And I have a brother that's a couple of years younger than me, but my brother, bless him, like, I say bless him, it's his own choice to be how he is, but like, he wasn't into what I was into, and I thought my brother was weird. Like, why isn't he into football like I am and all the other lads are? But he just wasn't into football. So there's no right or wrong, but I just thought it was weird. Like, why are all these guys I play with at school into football and my own brother isn't? Like, just found it really weird. But obviously everyone's different and there's no right or wrong to be into what you're into. But yeah, at school, primary school was the best years. Went to secondary school. Some of my primary school people kind of came to the same school, some didn't. Most of them did, to be fair. But yeah, secondary school, you mingle with other schools, don't you? And that's when the bullying started, like, they couldn't understand why I wanted to try and fit in with the guys. Why does a girl hang around the guys? Or you just fancy them. And they get jealous because they thought I fancied the boys when I just felt like one of the lads kind of thing because I was a tomboy. And one of the girls that had come from my primary school to that school, my mum's was friends with her mum, and I did hang around with kind of these girls, but when it got to secondary school, I wasn't cool, they were, I couldn't hang around with them because I wasn't cool, so even who I thought were my friends, they bullied me, and then, so I swapped in between a couple of schools, really. From a secondary school, I joined a middle school, so normally you have a primary school, middle school, and then, I don't know, what do they call it, an upper school? But I went from primary to secondary to a middle to another secondary. So I went to this posh middle school. It was obviously a public school, but everyone was like really posh. Like, I remember joining that school, and it was a church school. I always went to, my primary school was a church school. I'm not heavily Christian. I do believe there is a God. That's all I'm going to say on the comment on the subject, shall I say? But yeah, I went to this the secondary school I went to, basically, where I got bullied first, wasn't a Christian school. And then I went to this middle school, which was another church Christian school. Like I say, full of posh kids. I couldn't work it out. Like, it's really weird. Like, none of the people I shared a classroom with had heard rap music. I remember they were all into like High School Musical, and I was like, "Why are you into this rubbish? Like, you're so posh," and it just felt really posh to me. But I made some cool friends there. But then when I went to the secondary school that was adjoined to this school, it was another church school, this secondary school part 2, shall I say. But the bullying was even worse, and there was a reason for it this time, and the main reason was, again, I used to hang around with the guys, chase them, they chase me, those kind of playground, you're it kind of games. And this guy got a bit rough with me and kind of kicked me in, like, haha, kicked you in the bum. He kicked me in my bum, basically. I remember going into class that afternoon and thought, God, I can barely sit down. I'm in so much pain. Kind of mentioned it to my mum. Oh, my bum's really sore. It's a bit weird, like, blah, 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 kicked me. But, don't know why I'm so sore. Anyway, long story short, ended up with, like, a long-term back injury when I was a kid. So then I had to have different requirements at school. I was then seen as, like, a kid with like a disability as such or whatever. I wasn't disabled, but I did have like a disability, I suppose, and I got picked on for that. I mean, can you imagine? Aren't kids harsh? Like, if I saw someone in a wheelchair in the street, I wouldn't go up to them and go, "Ha ha, you're in a wheelchair." Like, you just wouldn't do that as adults. But I was in a wheelchair, but I'm just saying, like, you don't make fun of disabled people. But when I was a kid, like, I used to get made fun of because I had to use this lift key. I had to use a lift so to save me going up and down the stairs because I couldn't do that because my back was so sore. So because I had different requirements and special requirements because of this injury that I didn't ask for, I then got bullied, which is definitely what I didn't ask for. And that back injury really knocked me for six because, as I also just said, I was a tomboy. I didn't say this bit, but I loved PE. I loved sports at school, PE lessons, football, running, throwing. I was well into sports days. I loved sport at school. But when I had this back injury, I couldn't do any of that stuff. And I just couldn't. So I used to sit on the side of the lessons that I really wanted to get involved in, and because I was sat at the side, people knew why, I'd get bullied because of it. And I remember growing up, when you're growing up and you want to be all sorts of things. I remember I wanted to be a personal trainer, and I said to my mum, "How am I going to be a personal trainer now? And I can't do all these sports and stuff." And I'm definitely not into fitness nowadays anyway, so that wouldn't have gone anywhere anyway, even if it could. But yeah, I mean, not doing something I loved because of an injury was like so annoying, especially when I knew the injury wasn't my fault, it was done because of someone else. And I don't know what the right word for this is, but I didn't do well in school when it came to lessons and learning, and because of that I ended up in like the bottom grades and bottom sets. So like, you have at school, you have set 1 for all the fit kids, set 2 and set 3 is like for all the clever, intelligent kids. I was in set 1, and who else was in set 1 were all the people that bullied me because they weren't interested in learning. They'd bully me in the lessons. The teachers couldn't control the lessons and the naughty kids, so I used to get bullied, and basically every lesson I went in, I couldn't learn anything because I couldn't hear the teacher talk over these horrible, naughty kids, and mainly because the naughty kids were shouting at me. So yeah, I ended up, I tried to go to school, but I definitely wasn't learning anything because I was getting bullied and I couldn't hear the teacher. The teacher couldn't teach because they kept getting interrupted by these naughty kids all the time. So I struggled at school when it came to learning because I couldn't learn, and obviously I was getting bullied, so I just absolutely hated school. And like I say, this was all words, this wasn't physical, but it really messed up with I didn't know mental health was a thing back then, but I had no confidence whatsoever. I used to sit at a desk and try and like hide. Like I used to have somehow I managed to wangle to get like a teaching assistant, and to be honest, I just wanted someone just to talk to in class, someone just to sit next to and like not be horrible to me, as sad as that sounds. I was like, oh, I have a friend, but again, because I had a teaching assistant to try and help me, I got bullied because I was sat with an adult. You can't win at school sometimes. Tell you what, this is proper bringing back memories now. Like, I haven't talked in depth about this kind of stuff for a long, long time. And basically, to kind of cut that story short is what I'm going to say. We had our 6 weeks off school. I was about to come back to the secondary school in year 11. I think I did 1 week, and basically my mum took me out of school, and I'll explain that in a minute, but basically me and my brother ended up going to the same secondary school. He then joined. Obviously he was younger than me. He was getting a bit bullied, but I was definitely getting bullied worse. And yeah, 1 week into year 11, I think, the year when you take your GCSEs and all that stuff, not that I would have done well anyway, because I didn't know anything as a kid, like I wasn't learning. Yeah, I remember one night, I was struggling to go to sleep. It was a school night, as they say. I was struggling to go to sleep like I did most school nights, dreading the next day. Is blah 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 going to be in? It's going to be horrible to me, or is that girl going to be? It was mainly girls. It was lads in the end actually, as well. But yeah, I used to struggle getting to sleep, like just thinking about it all the time. So anxious, really nervous. I remember one night actually, I prayed to God. I said, Jesus, whatever, please make sure blah 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 isn't in tomorrow. I don't want her to bully me. Well, in the next day, she wasn't in. Couldn't believe it. So yeah, 1 week into me being in year 11, the year when I'm meant to be doing my GCSEs and leaving school, my final year at this school, And my mum said, "You're not going to school anymore." One school night when I was crying and hysterical, and I said, "Well, how do you manage that? What do you mean I'm not going to school? I have to." And she was like, "I'm just going to homeschool you for a few months until you're meant to be leaving school anyway." Let's also say this, like this secondary school I was at, I also had like a best girlfriend. But for some reason she ended up mixing with these other girls that were obviously cooler than me. And then she ended up ditching me for these other girls. I remember like she started hanging around with these other girls, and so I just naturally hung around with her while she was hanging around with these other girls. Then literally like one day her words were like, "I don't want you to hang around me anymore," and I was like, "But I had you first." "What you on about?" And yeah, then she ditched me. So very, very, yeah, just didn't have success with. I did in my early years of school, like I said, hang around the lads, being one of the lads, sort of thing. But the more as I went to kind of grown up school, the more girly girls that were there, and I wasn't one. I just didn't fit in a school because I was like a recluse. I wasn't the norm. I wasn't your girly girl. I wasn't into girly things, like, and I had this injury, so I was just always considered as different, and so I got bullied for being different. So yeah, I got pulled out of school, luckily, by my saviour, my mum, at the beginning of year 11. By the way, the puppy has just joined me in the room I'm trying to record this podcast. So you might hear a little bit of background noise, but hopefully he's a bit on the chill. So yeah, I left school before I got a chance to take any GCSEs, so I left school with no GCSEs, and then I thought that was what you needed in life to get a job, GCSEs, and I thought I was just going to be a failure for all my life because I had left school because I was getting bullied. I had no confidence anyway because I was getting bullied, and now I had no grades to my name, so I thought I'm just going to be a big fat failure in life. So already I've got the timer going, and this has been going for 22 minutes, so I can, this is going better and quicker than I thought it would, 22 minutes of me waffling about my life, basically, and as a person nowadays, I struggle to kind of talk about me in aspects of my life, like, you meet people and they just talk about them, don't they? They don't ask you a question. Well, I live by that kind of, like, I'm like, if I meet someone and they don't ask me a question, I'm not the type of person to be like, well, since you're not asking me about me, I'm going to tell you about me whether you like it or not. I always wait to get asked about, so what car do you drive then, Amber? Or, I don't know, where do you live? Or, what do you do for work? I always wait to get asked a lot of time in life. I'm not the kind of person to blab on about myself. So maybe that's kind of why I wanted to do this podcast, because this is a place for me to talk about my life where maybe I haven't because people haven't asked or people just aren't interested or whatever. But and also you choose to listen to this podcast. They're not all going to be like this. This is just like how this episode 1 has naturally progressed. I just wanted to, I suppose, talk about my early years growing up, and most of this podcast stuff is going to be about cars, but it's also going to be about personal life and puppy and my other half and work, and we can talk about anything on here and we can go into detail because it's just a listening thing, it's not a viewing thing. It's mad because a couple of hours ago I've been thinking about doing this podcast for a while and I didn't know how to record one. I tried a microphone, it wouldn't work, so now I'm just using my MacBook Air microphone, and I was kind of set about spending some money on a microphone, but if I don't have to spend money and we can get by like this, then I don't see why that's a problem. I think I should just carry on like this, with no mic, with me not buying a mic, because as I say, the laptop one seems to be doing okay at the moment. If you guys think otherwise, then, let me know. But yeah, we're going to do this kind of on the cheap. I say that, I've got a MacBook Air, but I've had that for a few years now. Anyway, but yeah, we're not doing this with much equipment at all. I've just got my laptop plugged in, and we're just waffling away. So yeah, I work 4 days a week. I always get a Wednesday off unless I swap my days for whatever reason. So yeah, today I just spent the time thinking, right, I must research how to do these podcasts. So I found out how to record one, as I just said. I also found out I don't need an external mic at the moment, unless you guys tell me otherwise. I also found out how to put them on Spotify, and I've just tested YouTube, and I think I will be able to get this onto YouTube as well. Obviously, no picture for the time being. Again, if you guys want to see my face whilst I talk, then let me know. Kind of prefer it if you didn't, because I'm just sat here at the moment on the bed with my laptop in the bedroom, and you guys don't know that, and because you can't see me, but I've just told you that. So I plan on doing more of these podcasts. This is just little episode 1. I was kind of thinking, do I call these podcasts a name? I think just to be kind of simple and keep everything matchy, we're just going to go with Driven247, the Driven247 podcast or whatever. And yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, this is also on YouTube. If you're on YouTube and you want to listen in your car, then this will be on Spotify as well. So another thing which kind of comes on from the school thing, I'm not going to keep this podcast going too much longer, but because I didn't have any friends at school and I left school early with no friends, I don't have any friends. Like, to be completely honest, if I can get my words out, I don't have any friends. My life and I suppose it is boring. Maybe it probably sounds it the way I'm going to say it, but I go to work, come home, and I suppose part of that is because I don't have any friends to go out with, and also I've always been very, very mature for my age. Like, I've never been wanting to go and clubbing and wasting money on getting drunk, and also I never had the friends to go and get drunk with, so I suppose because I had no friends, I've lived like a sheltered life, and in my kind of years now where I am settled down, got my own place, my boyfriend and stuff, and the little puppy, I just kind of want a kind of easy life, and I know I'm not the most exciting person in the world. I haven't travelled very much, I don't have any friends, as I just said. But my life isn't too bad, it could definitely be better. But I'm just thankful, I suppose, for where I am, that I have a place, a boyfriend, a dog, a job, a car, a laptop so I can record this podcast. You got to be grateful for what you do have, and that is easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. Those 2 YouTubers I think I mentioned earlier, I can't remember now, but I envy their lives so much, and I get wrapped up in that so much, to be completely honest. And I need to realise that their life isn't my life, unfortunately, to be honest, because I'd love their lives, and with the cars, money, blah blah blah. Never know one day, which is why I want to try and get on as many platforms as I can. Hence the podcast, as well as maintaining the YouTube channel. And recording these podcasts heavily depends on when my puppy decides to be quiet, because you don't want to have him barking in the background. So I have definitely got time to do more of these. Like I say, I get a day off during the week. I don't want to be trying to get peace and quiet on a weekend when my other half's here and me just lock myself in a room with the dog being quiet, my other half being quiet, and I'll just sit talking to a computer for half an hour. That's a bit weird. So I think I'll try and maybe do one a week, or maybe one every 2 weeks. Again, will there ever be a point when I run out of things to say? Probably not, but I don't want these to, maybe what I'm saying is maybe I'll do one every 2 weeks, depending on how they go. But I feel like, I don't know how many listeners, viewers these are going to get, but just talking out loud, I feel like I'm sat in front of the laptop just chatting, I feel like someone's listening. Mainly me. I'm listening to myself at the moment anyway, as I'm recording this, but sometimes it's just, I feel like I'm in a counselling session at the moment. I've never had any. I probably should have done at some point in my life, but I didn't. Again, I've suffered with bad mental health, and that is something we can talk about in another podcast. It's something, another subject a lot of people can probably familiarise themselves with. But for now, we're just gonna not keep this too deep. But yeah, maybe I can get away with. I feel like I could produce one of these a week. It's just whether you guys want to listen. We don't have to. It's your choice, but I don't know. We'll see how we go with this first one, but for sure there'll be more to come. And there's other things. Although I've just said I live a sheltered life, there are a lot of things I can talk about. It's mainly kind of car stuff. I'm going to try and keep it to mainly car stuff, but I'm pretty open about my personal life. Like, I don't know, I don't really have any other hobbies, to be honest. It's just cars and YouTube. But yeah, we can talk about a lot of different subjects on here, and maybe we could get some Q&As on here where I'll go into depth with answering people's questions, or talk about topics you may want me to talk about. So this can definitely progress into further podcasts where we talk about whatever, but mainly cars. But like I just said, it can be whatever. It can be whatever you guys want me to talk about, and it could be whatever I want to talk about. It's basically how this goes. So there we go then, guys. This has been alright actually. You know, this wasn't as nerve-wracking as recording my first YouTube video back when I did. And of course, doing the YouTube's given me loads of confidence. And here I am today, just waffling on. I know I've had little pauses in between to break clips up, and so I can have a bit of a breath and a drink of water without you hearing me slurping the water. That is. But yeah, we're into 30 minutes now. That will definitely do it. That's kind of the number I was at. You know, let me know if you've listened to this, if you've watched this as such on YouTube. Is there any subjects you want to know more about me, or general subjects you want me to talk about? I don't know. Have you even listened to this? You know, feedback would be much welcomed. So yeah, I think we'll just leave this episode 1 here. Just to kind of, I think I might do this every episode if I can remember to. I remember what I've spoken about, but this has just been like an introductory episode to say the podcasts, as I've kind of threatened in YouTube videos, they are now a thing. It's official. The third podcast, episode 1, has just been recorded, and I'm just finishing it up now. So yeah, just an introduction as to podcasts are a go. Here it is, episode 1. We touched on why I'm into cars, how I got into cars. We touched on my kind of early life, school. I was going to say friendships. I didn't really have any, did I? We touched on a little bit of family life. We can definitely delve into that a bit more because it just builds a bigger picture. And hopefully you found this interesting. I don't know. Like I say, just give me some feedback. Would be much appreciated. As I say, no equipment. Just got my laptop. The laptop. I was trying to say MacBook and laptop in one word there. Just got the microphone on the laptop, the built-in one we're using. Hopefully it's not too bad. At least I can play this back and I can actually hear myself talking. So that's the main point. We'll try and go without buying fancy equipment for the time being, for sure. But yeah, thanks for watching. My name's been Amber from Driven247, and thanks for watching. See, I've said it. This isn't a YouTube video. Thank you for listening. I've been Amber from Driven247, and I'll definitely see you in another episode 2. So thank you, guys.